Did you know that the story of Ananias and Sapphira is often seen as a powerful warning against deceit in the early church? Their lie led to some serious consequences that shook the community. In the book of Acts, chapter 5, we're introduced to the story of Sapphira, a woman who, along with her husband Ananias, attempted to deceive the early Christian community. It was a time of great excitement and growth for the church, but also a time of great temptation and testing. The couple's deceitful actions would have far-reaching implications, not just for themselves, but for the entire community of believers. As we dive into this story, we're reminded that the early church was a community that shared everything in common. They were a people who were dedicated to following Jesus and to living out their faith in every aspect of their lives. But amidst all the joy and excitement, a subtle thread emerged, the thread of deceit and dishonesty. As we explore this story, we're forced to confront the reality that deceit is a temptation that can affect any of us, at any time. It's a reminder that, even in our best efforts to follow Jesus, we're still human and still prone to sin. But it's also a reminder that God is a God of truth and integrity, and He will not be mocked. The central issue in this story is Sapphira's attempt to lie to the Holy Spirit. This wasn't just a small white lie, it was a deliberate attempt to deceive the very heart of God. And the consequences were severe. Sapphira's lie led to her husband's death, and eventually, to her own demise. When we look at the story of Sapphira, we're forced to confront the reality of sin in our own lives. We're forced to ask ourselves, am I honest with God? Do I deceive myself and others by pretending to be something I'm not? These are hard questions, but they're essential if we want to live lives that are truly pleasing to God. Sapphira's lie was a symptom of a deeper issue, a lack of fear and reverence for God. She had lost sight of the fact that God sees and knows everything. She had forgotten that God is a consuming fire, who will not tolerate deceit and dishonesty. But Sapphira's story also raises important questions about the nature of the church. Was the early Christian community so naive that they didn't see this coming? Were they so caught up in the excitement of their newfound faith that they let their guard down? As we delve deeper into the story, we're reminded that the early church was a community that was imperfect, but sincere. They were a people who were trying to figure out what it meant to follow Jesus in the midst of a hostile world. And they were a people who were willing to confront their own sin and failures, even when it was hard. In the ancient world, sin was seen as a public act, rather than a private affair. When someone sinned, it wasn't just a personal issue, it was a communal issue that affected the entire community. And this is exactly what happened with Sapphira's lie. It didn't just affect her and her husband, it affected the entire church. In many ways, Sapphira's story is a reflection of the human condition. We're all prone to sin and deception, and we're all in need of redemption and forgiveness. But Sapphira's story is also a reminder that God is a God of justice, who will not tolerate deceit and dishonesty. As we explore the historical and cultural context of the early church, we're reminded that honesty and integrity were highly valued in the ancient world. The church was a community that was known for its commitment to truth and transparency, and Sapphira's lie was a threat to that very identity. When Peter confronted Sapphira about her lie, he wasn't just confronting her, he was confronting the very heart of the church. He was reminding the community that they were called to be a people of truth and integrity, and that deceit and dishonesty would not be tolerated. Sapphira's response to Peter's question, "How is it that you have agreed together to test the Spirit of the Lord?" is a fascinating one. She tries to maintain the illusion that everything is fine, that her lie is just a small mistake. But Peter sees right through it, and he calls her out on her deceit. The moment of truth had finally arrived, and Sapphira's lie was exposed for the whole community to see. It was a shocking moment, one that would have far-reaching implications for the church. But it was also a moment of great significance, one that would remind the community of the importance of honesty and integrity. When Sapphira fell dead at Peter's feet, the community was shaken to its core. They realized that they had been living in a state of deception, and that God was not to be trifled with. It was a sobering moment, one that would change the course of their lives forever. As we reflect on Sapphira's story, we're reminded that honesty is not just a moral virtue, it's a necessity for anyone who wants to follow Jesus. Without honesty, we're living in a state of deception, and we're in danger of falling into the same trap as Sapphira. So what can we learn from Sapphira's story? Firstly, we're reminded that honesty is essential for a healthy relationship with God. Secondly, we're reminded that deceit and dishonesty have serious consequences, not just for ourselves, but for the entire community of believers. And finally, we're reminded that God is a God of truth and integrity, who will not be mocked. As we close out this video, I want to leave you with a challenge. Take some time to reflect on your own life and ask yourself, am I honest with God? Am I living a life of integrity and transparency? These are hard questions, but they're essential if we want to live lives that are truly pleasing to God. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to check out our next video, where we'll be exploring another fascinating story from the early church. If you have any thoughts on Sapphira's actions, be sure to leave them in the comments below.